All right, Charles Schwab Challenge. What you looking for? What you got?
Yeah, so this one is quite different from last week, at least from a handicapping perspective on my end. I'm curious to see how Kelly went about it from his end. But, you know, what we're looking at here in this one, it's a less than driver course a lot of times. And so got some tight fairways. It's super, super tree lined. It is more of a positional course than it is you certainly can't bomb and gouge this course. And so there's guys here, and you'll see this in my betting card as well, where, look, I didn't even factor driving distance at all into my model this week, in like literally not 0% on driving distance. I don't care, because there's going to be so many different times where guys are taking less than driver as it is anyway. I was much more concerned with accuracy, keeping it in the fairway, being able to position your tee shots to where you were able to have the right angles to go into these greens. They're small greens, but they're not like we saw last week, where if you hit them, it'll hold. It's not like they're angled and undulated and all the different stuff like that. There's not going to be the weather concerns either that we had last week. So, you know, I'm looking for guys, really good approach type stuff with the irons, guys that can put it in the fairway so they're not sitting there and putting themselves behind the 8-ball. Because one of the things that it is, if you do spray it off the tees, and especially if you spray it a little bit too far, you can be in some 3-inch rough on this course. And apparently it varies, like how penal it could be. But I'll get a tweet about that.
Yes, you will.
But
it's coming.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where, you know, if you get into 3-inch rough, and if you get in apparently the bad 3-inch rough, then you're just not, you know, you're basically going to be really struggling to make par.
Yeah.
And so I was really into, you know, fairways gained. I was really into good drives gained. I doubled up on that this week.
I kind of split the two. Is that what you did? Because that's where my research led me to, was some situations are going to be more penal than others, right?
Yeah.
So I'm okay if I'm in the fringe on some holes, you know, right? Or in the light rough off to the side, I shouldn't say fringe, right off the fairway. Like that might be okay on some holes, but I really mainly need it in the fairway.
It's a par 70 like we saw last week as well, too. So just don't, there's not going to be guys going out and lighten this up from a scoring standpoint either, right? Because when you only have 2 par 5s to get after, and one of the par 5s for some of the guys may be reachable in 2, but it's an over 600-yard par 5. And so, you know, again, there's not a ton of guys. That one might play as a true kind of 3-shot par 5 as well. So I did not factor where I typically will factor in par 5 scoring. If you guys have been, you know, watching this program for the last couple of years, you know, like I like par 5 scoring. I like guys that can go out and score on these par 5s, because it really is the opportunity for you to move up the leaderboard. But with there only being 2, and one of them being kind of a true 3-shot par 5, I didn't factor. I like literally 0% again. Didn't even put it in.
I guess if there's anybody out there that is trying to, you know, model this stuff there by themselves, or really get into these stats like Matt and I do, I think you could almost say rule of thumb for me, Matt, and I don't know if you're the same way, but I would guess you're pretty close, is, hey, if there's 4 par 5s on a course, some kind of par 5 scoring is going in my model. If there's only 2, it's usually not going to be in it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And the par 3s are actually some of the hardest par 3s on tour as well. And so, again, I didn't really factor in par 3 scoring or anything like that, but like that's where I emphasized kind of like approach game, iron play, things like that a little bit more this week again than I did last week. So I was really, really kind of in on that stuff. And, you know, look, when I say that the weather's not going to be a factor, look, I'm not a weatherman. Things can change rapidly, but it doesn't look like it's going to be anything big this week. There is holes 3 to 5 are the most kind of the famous holes, if you will, on Colonial here, called the Horrible Horseshoe. Yeah, and they're the 3 toughest holes on the course, and they have actually played collectively since 2003. Those 3 holes, as good as these golfers are, as good as these guys play, those 3 holes since 2003 in this tournament have collectively played over par. So, I mean, that's, you know, it's despite how great these golfers are these days, those 3 holes have played over par. And so, you know, from mine, we'll get to the bets on the other side here. But for me, Kelly, it was, you know, I looked at approach, good drives, fairways gained, proximity. I did a 125 to 150 and 150 to 175 because about 60% of all of the approach shots are going to fall in that range right there. You're not going to get any of the super long approach shots on this course. Greens and regulations gained. I did do par fours, 400 to 450 yards because 7 of the par fours fall between 400 and 450 yards. Opportunities gained, just because I do want to see when these people do hit the green, if there was any, and it's a very small percentage, but opportunities gained. I did want to see if these people do get it on the dance floor, like kind of what they are able to do here. But that's kind of the model for me again. Like a lot of the stuff that you typically see me put in, I didn't put in this week.
And just real quickly, what I looked at in mine a little bit more, I did look at strokes gained off the tee a little bit. Then it was fairways gained, good drive gain, heavy strokes gained approach, par fours 350 to 400 and 400 to 450. Proximity, I did the same as you. And then I looked a little bit at birdies or better gain and bogey avoidance on these small greens.
All right, you guys haven't given your golf bets yet, have you?
We have not.
Does one of you want to do
not.
that? Who wants
do
to
it.
start?
Matt,
Mateo,
go
you
ahead.
start.
You want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So again, like I said, I ran, 20% of the model on approach, 15 on good drives, 10 on fairways gained, 10 and 10 on 125 to 150 and then 150 to 175, 10% on greens in regulation, 10% on par fours, 400 to 450. And then I just put like a small little 5% on opportunities gained because I wanted to see, again, if these guys do hit these greens, what they're going to be able to get. So what we spit out here is from an outright perspective, Victor Hovland, Sam Burns, Kevin Na, Brian Harmon, C.T. Pan, and Ricky Fowler. 2 shortish shots there in 23 to 1 and 30 to 1 on Hovland and Burns. Middle of the pack there on Na and Harmon at 50 to 1. And then a couple of long shot bombs kind of on C.T. Pan and Ricky Fowler. Both of these guys. So C.T. Pan actually was showing up in the version of this model that I made across 50 rounds, 36 rounds, 24 rounds was far higher in the model than a 99 to 1 price would dictate. So had to put him on the card. And then Ricky Fowler from when I did a recency, kind of like a super recent run of the model, like Ricky's game is trending up. And with that at 135 to 1, basically I didn't want to miss the boat on him. I think Ricky is, if he kind of keeps what he's been doing, I think he's going to contend again sometime soon. And I didn't want to miss a opportunity at 135 to 1 if I'm correct on that. So
He's looking better.
yeah, so some long shots there on Ricky. Top 20 bets. And so I went ahead and listed all of these things out here with this because we got a tweet this past week that apparently I was a loser. I was shocker to me that I was a loser this past week at the PGA
Let
Championship.
me guess who. Yes.
PGA Championship this past week. So if anyone that actually listens every single Wednesday, I always say any outright ticket that I have, I always have some sort of placement market bet on that player as well. Since that was apparently not, I'm going to list all these out for future reference. So anyway, top 20s on Hovland, Burns, Na, Harmon with a lowercase h and Kirk. And then a top 40 bet on Harmon, C.T. Pan, Ricky Fowler, Matthew Neesmith.
Yeah.
Top 30s, which you can find at some books out there, Webb Simpson, Justin Rose in the top 30 market. And then just 3 matchups this week. I'm taking Bazootin over Eric Van Rooyen.
I was waiting for it.
And then I've got 2 against Daniel Berger, and this is mainly just against Daniel Berger's form, right? I like Daniel Berger long term. It's just I think he's still dealing with whatever this injury thing is going on with him, and so
Got great tournament history here, but I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I didn't want to touch
well,
him.
like I said last week, it was a time that I would have loved to have been on Berger, but it seemed like a course that fit for him again, and it didn't work out, and so I got a plus money price on Sung J M just because he's coming off of the COVID against Daniel Berger, and then Justin Rose against Daniel Berger as well. So that's just a bet on recent form there for Daniel Berger.
Yeah, so we flip over to mine. Yeah, just to quickly go through my model, it was about 20%. No, it was a little more than that. About 25% split between off the tee, fairways gained, and good drives gained. Very heavy on strokes gained approach, about 30% there. Split about 20% between par fours, 350 to 400 and 400 to 450. A couple proximities, and then birdie or better gain and bogey avoidance. And we had guys, I had a different top guy in each one that I ran, Mito Pereira, for the last 12 rounds, but, that factors heavily into what he did last week. Colin Morikawa, last 24 rounds was my top one, and last 36 was Tom Hoagie.
Oh.
So Tom Hoagie, I did play just a finishing position market on, played him at a long number in my top 20s. But for outrights, all I really got on this week was Victor Hovland, Max Homa, and Brian Harmon. Brian Harmon, great tournament history here. Popped in the model a bit, not a ton, but combine that with the tournament history, liked that. Max Homa still popping up there in the model, top 10 in every one that I ran. Victor Hovland, top 5 in everything that I ran, so loved him. You can see all my finishing positions, top 20s on Hovland, Homa, Harmon, Chris Kirk, Tom Hoagie, top 40s on CT Pan and Smotherman. And first round leader bets for people out there, Jordan Spieth I did grab a piece of, Chris Kirk and Sebastian Munoz.
Kelly, did you get through all your bets? You thought you gave it a fair shake?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, talk about the matchups.
Yeah, matchups. I did take Spieth over JT. Look, I mean, this is like, I'm just shocked JT's playing in this. This is not a small tournament on tour. This tournament has a ton of history. I understand that, but man, you rarely see this anymore. Guys after a major win playing. So Jordan Spieth, I don't know about you, Matt, but I would say he was pretty easily my number 1 ranked golfer this week. In fact,
Hovland was for me by far.
Okay, so I would say Hovland was probably number 2 for me. Spieth was number 1. I'm just not playing him at the short odds that he's at for outrights. But annoyingly, I didn't look ahead to this week from last week because, we used Jordan Spieth as our one and done last week. Would have been nice to use this week.
Yeah, Hovland number 1 in my 50, 36, and 24.
Wow, okay. Hovland was the most consistent through.
And then as you kind of talked about, I mean, we're super skewed here on the 12 round. Mito was number 1 in mine as well on the 12 round because we're pretty skewed on recent results with that.
Right, it's Mito 1, Spieth 2, Fleetwood 3 in that for me. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you just gotta when you run models of that short a range, you got to keep in mind what just happened, right?
And the other thing though with that is even with Hovland's kind of mixed bag performance here over the last few tournaments, he was still 4th in mine over the last 12 rounds as well. So just, he was super, super high there. And again, like you guys know, I was a complete fade of him last week.
7
and I'm on him this week. I played every head-to-head I could find against him last week, and I'm on him, this week because again, this isn't a short game deal. The greens are small, so if he finds the greens, he's no chance for 3 putts really. Has one of the smallest 3-putt percentages as well on the tour over the course of the season. So I mean, there's just a lot of things I think working in Hovland's favor here for this one, specifically with the weather holds as well, because his iron play can get him into these holes close, and I think he can take advantage of some of these things.
Yeah, so the other matchup that I played, so Jordan Spieth, it really was more of just I'm getting plus 110 on Spieth, who I really like at this course. Ranks higher to me over JT, plus the factor of him coming in off the major. I do like this matchup. The other one that Davis Riley over Maverick McNeely. Maverick McNeely's a guy we've played a bunch on this show in different markets. Just, in recent models, really not ranking that high, hasn't had some great finishes here recently, whereas Davis Riley is on, 13th in the PGA, 9th in the Byron Nelson the week before, 5th in the Mexico Open the week before that. He's kind of been on a tear recently. So this is very, very recent form matchup, I would say I'm playing here, but getting plus money on that side of it, I did like it.